Hi there, welcome to Sunnyside Journals. Oh, hold on. 'Tis the season, and we're working on this journal again. Now, don't be scared. Actually, don't be mad at me either. I did a whole video yesterday, and the whole thing taped without any volume. And of course, if you follow me, you know it's just a whole bunch of my hands flailing around. And then the end was even cut off. But as it turns out, I don't like what I did. So we're going to do something real scary right now, and hopefully I can bring you along and it'll all work. I had lined the new spine. I took the spine off of the doweling, the new one we made together, and then I put in some fabric. I put it face side down, so in case it wears out, it would show through the torn gutters of the spine. I used this pretty fabric. It doesn't show up on camera. This looks brown, but in fact it's green. So it's really nice fabric to use because it's sort of green and red and gold. But it's nice and thick. It's like a denim. Anyhow, I don't like how it turned out, and I've already started working on it, so ignore that. If you recall, this part of the spine was completely detached. I could put my fingers through it and say hello. And I thought, oh well, I'll get it all together, and then maybe I'll do some shabby chic sewing there. But I still wasn't liking how that was laying, even if I shabby chic'd it. And I think what I want to do is I want to take this whole layer off. I want to put some lace underneath it, and then I want to sew the spine back on. So, and you can see here, I've already been gently lifting this spine off, and it's hard to do because, boy oh boy, 3-in-1. If you ever wonder, will 3-in-1 hold? It holds. But we have ways. We have knives and tools and gear and stuff, and we can get it done. So what I'm doing now, and I'm going to pause while I do it, is I'm going to continue lifting this off, encouraging it to just let go. Fortunately, this paper from where the old spine liner was glued down is helping me to just slowly lift it and take it off. I'll be able to leave the new spine in that we created together, and I'll be able to leave that fabric in there. And I'll take you along as I do that. But for right now, I will pause. I'm going to finish lifting this, and you're just going to have to trust me that this is going to work out really, really good. So I'm going to pause. It's coming up. I've unpaused. Oh, obviously, duh. I wanted to show you a little bit of how I'm doing it. Let's see if I can bring down closer. All right. It's going to sound scary. For those of you who love old books, you're going to think, oh, Catherine, why are you doing this? You got to trust me on this. So I'm just slowly lifting it off. This side is already disconnected, if you recall. This side is tearing as I'm doing this. And I'm just crossing my fingers. I want to be able to save this word cash. But it's coming up okay. I'm just sort of rolling it off. Let me make sure I'm in. Oh, I'm liking that. Okay, I'm happy. I know it looks kind of messy. I'm happy. Let me see. Yes, we saved it. We did it. And there. Yes. All right, so I just want to take this part off gently. And I'm going to just, can you see? Yes, you can. just going to tear it with a little help from an X-Acto. Go. Yes. There we go. Okay. So we've got the spine cover off. That's okay. I'm going to leave that there. All right. So I've got that off and we saved the word cash. Oh, come on. There we go. So what I want to do now, because we're going to shabby chic this cover up a bit. Let me move whatever knives are sharp. Oh yeah, this one's really sharp. Because I always end up grabbing things from the wrong end. I don't know if you do that. Yeah, I do that. All right, so here's what I'm thinking I want to do. The inside, that's good. I have a few little areas I need to glue down. I was lifting things to see how I was going to approach deconstructing what I had already done. So, I'd lifted that a little bit. I'll be gluing that back down. But this is good. This is a big book. I want it nice and loose and floppy. And shabby chiking it is the best way to do that. So what I think I want to do is I have some tea-dyed lace here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this on my sewing machine. And I'm going to sew it right in there. Like that, so that this little bit of lace will stick out. And it'll be all along that edge. And then I'm going to put this back on top of it. Just this part. So I'll be tearing it some more and sewing that back on top so that you see the lace. And yes. Now I'm going to have to go press this. So there's going to be stopping and starting. I want this out in its full beauty. It tried to shrink back and it's dried like this because I had it in a tea bath. This was pure white. So I'm going to go press it. I want a little bit more. Scissors. Oh, there you are. And I'll go and press this out. I don't think I'll use any starch on it. I still want it soft and old looking. So I don't think I will use starch. Oh, hold on.
Great, thanks. I'm so excited. I've needed it for a while.
Hold on. There we go. Sorry. I had my laptop over there. I was watching some TikTok while I had it paused. All right. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to go iron this. See you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. I have pressed this. Looks much better. I actually did give it just a little bit of light starch. And I plan on it going there. Let me come back a bit. There we go. I also think I still think that this gutter needs a bit more support. Hold on. She's tearing things out. It needs a bit more support than just that one layer of fabric. So I am going to put some cheesecloth, tea-dyed cheesecloth in there too, because the grungier, the better, right? And I want it to look really nice and mucky and messy. So, let's see how long I want this to be. I want to give myself a bit more room. Let's just tear this. I guess I should tell you my intentions for this wonderful book. And you probably have already guessed. If you've been following me for the past couple of years, you know that I love Dickens. I love his style of writing. I love his sense of humor that is that is interwoven throughout. You have to sort of look for his sense of humor, and it's there, and it's wonderful. Anyhow, and I love, of course, A Christmas Carol. I love the message behind it, that people who truly want to change are absolutely redeemable. They can change. I love where it takes place because it reminds me of my family. My father's side of the family came from the actual neighborhood where Dickens placed the Cratchit family. And that warms my heart because when I watch whoever's version of it I'm watching, whether it be Alistair Sim or Jim Carrey's or the Muppet Christmas Carol, which I love. That's my favorite version. Can you believe it? A Muppet Christmas Carol, and it's my favorite version. I look around and I wonder, what did the house look like that my ancestors lived in? And my ancestors would have been very poor as well, like the Cratchit family. I love it. So for that reason as well, I love the story. And it's very quick and easy to read. If you've never read it, you can usually do it in one evening, or a little bit in a couple of evenings. Maybe read a stave a night. Anyhow, so I have done 2 other Dickensy kinds of junk journals in the past for Christmas. And the last one I made, I called it a Cratchit Christmas. And I thoroughly enjoyed making it. I love how it turned out. I imagined that this book was was A Christmas Carol from the point of view of how Ebenezer Scrooge's, the events of that night changed Bob Cratchit's life and his family's forever. How one person, I want that wider, how one person can, it's that ripple effect, right? I'm wondering if I don't think I'm going to be able to tear it again. Do you know what that's like, right? When you try and tear something and it's too small, the piece you want to tear is too little. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to. I did it to myself. I just don't want it. It's not going to let me. What have I done? And I'm wasting my precious camera time, my precious 30 minutes that I get. Well, I wonder if I can just tear it along. I might have to pause and do this and see if I can rip that. All right, I'm going to pause again. Hold on. Okay, we're doing better. I was able to get it down to the width I like. I did have to tear a whole new strip off of my little bundle here. That's okay. You know cheesecloth. It will get used, even if I've cut one and tossed it aside. It does, just because it's tossed aside doesn't mean it's been tossed away. So here's what I think. This cheesecloth will support those gutters there that right now only have this fabric, which is actually still pretty good. Like I said, it's the weight of blue jean material, denim. So it'll be good. I want this here underneath like this, so I'll be gluing it down, and then I want this on top like that. So we got some cool layering going on there. And now I have to tear this because I'm going to glue this back on and I'm going to sew it right through the journal. So let's see if this will let me tear, because I don't want this leftover part from the gutter. See this? Yes, it's going to tear nicely. And I don't mind if it wants to try and, oh, you do want to try and give me grief. No, you don't. Let's snip that there. Hope I'm in camera. I am. Let me come up a little bit. I'm going to stand for a second. We're on the scissors. All right, so what am I at? 15 minutes. Let me start my timer again. So I need to restart it. I've got 14 minutes. Just so my little alarm over there can go off if I'm going on too long. That's good. Okay. I don't mind that. So anyhow, I just have this, my heart just loves A Christmas Carol. I love the characters in it. I love the location especially, because I feel like it really makes it real for me, the location. So the one that I made that I really enjoyed, A Cratchit Christmas, I had one chapter in there that I called Mrs. Cratchit's Kitchen, and it was on cooking and recipes, plum pudding, because that's a huge part of Mrs. Cratchit's scenes in the book, is when she brings out her meager little plum pudding that she managed to find a way to get the ingredients out of her household budget and pull it all together and make Christmas magical for her family. So I had this one chapter that I called Mrs. Cratchit's Kitchen. And here's a little interesting thing. In the book A Christmas Carol, she's simply referred to as Mrs. Cratchit. We never learn her first name. She's Mrs. Cratchit. We learn some of the children's names, but not all of them. And in later versions of A Christmas Carol, some people have taken a little artistic license. I'm just fraying this a bit, of course. They've taken a little artistic license, and they refer to Mrs. Cratchit as Emily. And I have my own opinions on this. Okay, I like that. I like this part, and I like that all worn off. I have my own opinions on Mrs. Cratchit's name, because it certainly was appropriate for her to be known as Mrs. Cratchit in the story. Of course, Bob loved her dearly, so he would refer to her as my dear, and that, she was his sweetheart. But, back in those days, she would have been Mrs. Robert Cratchit. Only family would have referred to her by her given name. So that's what I'm thinking. Yes, that's what I want. So, and here's my theory. I don't think her name was Emily, even though Emily is a beautiful name. I have an Emily, and I love that name. But I think her name was either Martha or Belinda. And if those names sound familiar to you, the two Cratchit girls whose names are mentioned in the story are, the oldest daughter was Martha. Then there was a younger daughter named Belinda. And Belinda was, both names were very typical for that era. Actually, my great-great-great-grandmother had a sister named Belinda. And again, that was the Victorian era. That was the early Victorian era, and that would have been an appropriate name. But I think it was Martha because a very strong tradition back then was your first male child was named after the father, and your first female child was named after the mother. Now, you might say, oh, Catherine, but children didn't always survive. So they may have had a daughter named Emily. The first daughter was named Emily, and she passed away. So her name could have been Emily. And that's very true. But another tradition in back then is if you did have a child that was given a very important family name that you wanted carried on, and that child passed away, the next one that came along got the name again. Even in my own family, my great great grandmother was her name was spelled Jeanette, but the family pronounced it Janet. And even when they came to Canada, she was known as Janet, not Jeanette. That's why it was hard to actually find her when my dad and my mother were telling me about her. I was looking in the records for a woman named Janet, and it turns out she spelled it Jeanette, and sure enough, she was named after her mother. And sure enough, when she had children and named her first daughter Janet, her first daughter passed away, and she named her second daughter Janet. And then she went on to have more children. She eventually had 13. And at some point, the second Janet, who had survived, did pass away as a child. So she eventually did have another daughter. I think she was like number 8 or 9 in the line of more children that she had. And there was a replacement, and she became Janet. And that one did survive and lived to old age. Actually, the whole family did move to Canada. And now I never met Janet, but I did. Her sister was my grandmother, and I met several of my grandmother's other sisters. She had a sister named Dolly. She had a sister named Ethel, and such. But anyhow, and hence my theory, the likelihood, if Martha was the oldest daughter, then that would mean that Mrs. Cratchit had her when she was younger, healthier, able to carry, less sickly from poverty and malnutrition. Think about it, Tiny Tim. They now think that perhaps maybe he had rickets, and that was the cause of his disability, and that's why with proper nutrition, eventually he also grew to a healthy young adult. They were able to solve his health disorders just through healthy food. So, and then there's my theory again. The earlier children born to a woman have a better chance of survival over the babies that she would have maybe into her late 40s if she was still having children. Okay, I've got to stop talking, but I love the story. So that comes full circle to why I think that Mrs. Cratchit's name was probably either Martha or Belinda, because perhaps she had named her first daughter Belinda, and then she had Martha, and then maybe the older Belinda died, so the next daughter came along and she named her Belinda. Do you see what I mean? That's how it could. So in my heart, I always just refer to her as Martha. The oldest daughter, I've decided in my Christmas Carol world that Mrs. Cratchit's name is Martha Cratchit. But she would have been known to society and to acquaintances as Mrs. Robert Cratchit. So I'm just using 3-in-1 here again, and I'm just going over this. This is the spine that we created. I'm sure I'm going to run out of time. I've spent way too much time talking here, but I just love this time of year when I can get into all my Christmas Carol goodies and read it again and watch all the different versions. So I'm spreading this out, and it's going to have quite a few layers on it. But that's okay. Oh, so now I still have to finish telling you what this book is going to be. So I so enjoyed making that one signature on Mrs. Cratchit's kitchen that I've decided, when I got this book in with some happy mail, a lovely, lovely lady out in British Columbia, Canada, messaged me and said, I'm cleaning out my room, and could I send you some things? And I said, oh, well, that would be lovely. I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Well, some things actually was an entire banker's box full of amazing things. It was Christmas in a box for a junk journaler. I'm just smoothing this part out so that the lace lies nicely, and so that eventually that old spine, when I put it back on, lies nicely. So, and in it was this ledger. And as soon as I found this ledger, I knew what I had to do with it, because it's green and it's a money book. So in my imagination, Bob Cratchit, this book, they had to tear out a bunch of pages to file them in with some other paperwork, and before they knew it, the book was only a few meager little pages left, but it was still a book. And in Victorian England, paper for poor people was a rare commodity. So for Mrs. Cratchit to get a book with some paper in it would have been just a find, a real find. So I imagine that Bob brought this book home to her and said, my dear, I'm sure you could use this. And she said, oh, yes, this would be wonderful. Thank you. I have things I want to keep track of, my household finances, my favorite recipes. I want to know who I sent letters to this season and who sent us letters from last season, and my shopping list. And I imagine that her mind just went crazy with things that she could keep in her very own book. And that's when I decided that this book is going to be Mrs. Cratchit's holiday household book. And that's what this is going to become. And I'm planning on it being almost like a laptop book. So I will definitely be putting some of the old original signatures back in, but I will also be putting in some tuck spots that are right onto the interior of the book. And I've got all kinds of things planned for this book. I'm hoping to make it very Victorian-y, in that I'm not necessarily going to be using poinsettias in that. Victorians quite often used roses and forget-me-nots for their Christmas flowers. And it wasn't always red and green. They used other colors. They loved colors. They loved sparkly silver and gold tinsely things for when their scrap work. So I'm imagining that she would have used things that she, tucked away and saved here and there. They loved scrapbooks, the Victorians. And I imagine that she was such a sensible woman that even though she started this book when they were very poor and Robert just brought it home to her, and it was, she was making good use of it, I imagine that once they were financially very comfortable, that she was such a sensible woman, and this book had become so beloved that she just continued to use it anyhow, even though she was now very comfortable financially, could probably go out and buy herself a beautiful book. And she chose to keep her original book that she loved, maybe put some new nicer things in. So that's how I'm going to incorporate some grungy old papers, but maybe some pretty sparkly new papers because she had a bit more money for those last few years of filling up this book. And that's what I am envisioning for Mrs. Cratchit's holiday household book. Uh-oh. So time's up. It is. Oh, I'm at 30 minutes. Well, at least I was able to tell you what my plans are. So I'm liking how that's laying. I am going to be putting this over top. The next time we get together, I probably will have this done. I'm going to be putting this over top like that, so the cheesecloth will be sticking out underneath like that. And then I am going to put this back on top, and it's going to look like that. And I think that's going to look really great. Well, thanks for joining me today. Sorry if I rambled on so much, and you know me, talk. Welcome to Martha Cratchit's holiday household book. This is going to get really, really fun. I've got all kinds of plans for it. I'm so excited about it. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon. Bye.